Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. In this video what we're going to be looking at is a little bit of maintenance job. I need to get coolant in this car now. We're obviously well into winter and I've only got water in there at the minute, so making sure that I'm going to switch that out and get that coolant 50-50 mix in there. And then we're also going to look at building up that back end. We've had the issue with the light, but we should be able to fit everything else up onto the car. So stick to the end and hopefully I'll be able to show you a completed transformation of the original rear end of this car up to the 2025 model, minus maybe a couple of tail lights. Okay, so because it's dropping in temperature here now, what I want to do is make sure that my coolant is all topped up, and I've definitely got a 50-50 mix. I've had this car for a while now and all I've been doing is topping it up with water. Obviously I wanted to check when I did the rad pack that there's no further leaks. I now know that I've had no leaks from the coolant system and it's bled through okay. What I've got for this is one of the evacuation tools. I've never used this before, so I'll go through the process of using that, and from all what I've read there doesn't seem to be anything that I can do in terms of with the Rostec system to be able to open up in the heater matrix or anything like that. What I'm going to plan to do now is basically attach it to the actual main coolant system, and then once I've done that I'll attach it here as well, which I'm pretty certain that this is a separate circuit for the battery system. What we'll do is we'll try and drain that, see if that actually drops. If it doesn't, then we then know that is definitely a separate circuit. I was told by Porsche that they thought it might be one complete system and just two top up areas. I can't see why that would be the case, but we'll start with that, and then if this does drop, then happy days, we've only got to do it once. If not, we'll have to do it twice obviously with that as well, but that'll give me a bit of practice with this new kit that I've got, and hopefully this makes this job a lot easier than it would have been otherwise to bleed the system. Okay, so this is the equipment I've got. I've just got a cheap set from eBay. I think it's around sort of £50 for this, and you do need to bear in mind you do need an air compressor, so I'm hoping that I can hook all this up now, show you guys the process. First protocol is going to be removing all the old fluid out, get as much air out the initial evacuation line as possible to then be ready for filling as soon as I've fully emptied the system. Okay, so in this kit what we've got is number 9, seems to be the correct one for our coolant reservoir. So simply undo the cap, this should then screw in nicely, that should then create a seal, attach the evacuation line, which should in theory just pop onto there. There we go. We now have the airline all hooked up. So I've got 50-50 mix in there. I've just marked where my distilled water was and then where my fill point was for the actual coolant as well. Coolant that I've got is direct from Porsche, and as I say, just make sure you've got some distilled water to mix with it as well. So I'm going to set this all up now, and then I'll start the evacuation, and then also I will be looking to refill that with the new coolant. But in between that, what I'll do is I'll check that it holds the vac as well once I know all the old coolant's out. Unfortunately it was a fail with that to evacuate the coolant, guys, and as you can hear it was absolutely chucking it down as well, and I got an opportunity to get the car moved indoors, so I'm going to take you along now to the new place and we'll crack on with the rest of the build. Hello and welcome back to the channel, guys. So what I want to do today is kind of give you a quick update. We've got some good news, got some bad news. So first I'll start with the good news. You actually find me back inside a unit, so absolutely fantastic for the builds. As you can see, we have the Porsche in here, we've got the Mazda MX-5 still, and what we're going to be looking at doing is getting this Porsche finally finished. So I was going to hold back moving into this unit until January. It's currently December, but the weather's really been against me here in Manchester and it's not stopped raining, so couldn't pass up the opportunity to move in a little bit early. Now the bad news is we've actually found that we've got an issue with some of the kit. Now initially I thought it was a couple of the lights. What I'm actually finding now is it's just the indicator in the driver's side rear tail light. So what we have is this tail light, none of the indications work on it. The left hand side when plugged in works absolutely perfectly. Originally I did think I had some issues with the tail bar. They are no longer. We've worked out what that was, and it was as simple as some of the issues with the actual plugs themselves. So we managed to get those wired in and get that working. I'll show you what that looks like now as a bit of a teaser. It looks absolutely amazing. I was really looking forward to getting this finished. I was hoping to get this on the road this month. It's not the time of year where you want to be driving a little convertible around at all at the minute. So yeah, unfortunately, that does now not look like it's going to be the case. This is obviously from China, all this body kit. I'm having a few issues going back and forth with them to prove that it doesn't work. You can plug these tail lights in either side of the rear, so it's very obvious when you plug the one that works in, you can see the full functionality. You plug the one that doesn't work in, you can see the brake lights work and the light in general works, but just that indicator doesn't work. So very frustrating. Other than that, the kit has been excellent, to be honest. They've given me like a WhatsApp number and they have been fairly helpful. I feel like there's a few translation issues, but we're almost there, and I've actually got this booked in for an MOT and a service with Porsche in a couple of weeks. So it really is a kicker, because we could have done it, that light's now failed. I don't think there's a chance that I'm going to get one of those from China, even if I paid for express delivery in time for it to come before that. So it may well be now January before I get this on the road, which is a little bit frustrating, but we will get there. And it will be some transformation. What I'll try and do is cram as much as possible into these videos so you can see the progress. This has now taken since August, I believe I got this car. So it really has been months and months of work into this to get this built back up with this body kit. I personally think it's going to be well worth it by the time it's done, and it will look fantastic. But as I say, please do bear with me with the videos. I have been a little bit slower to upload, and that is the reason why, because I'm trying to upload stuff that gives you a bit of a transformation from start to the finish of the video, or at least shows you some section of the actual build. But in terms of the car itself, it really is coming together now. I've got the front bumper built up there, I've got the rear bumper built up. I just need to transfer the wiring loom over to that, and I've also now got some wheels on order. I'll show you them when they arrive. These are currently the 21-inch turbo wheels. I will be going for a 22-inch, which will kind of go with the facelift body kit that I'm putting on this. It'll kind of make sense when I show you guys that. Right, so we're back at it on the lights, and this was a little issue that I was having. This tail light, the indicator's not working. So what I found is when I had some issues with the light bar, which I'll show you in a minute, with that powered up, that wasn't actually functioning at all. What I actually found the issue to be was not a defect with the unit, but these adapter plugs here, basically where the pins slot in, if they're not open correctly and it's going down the side, it's not making a proper connection. So that is what was causing the issue with this, and now I'm going to double check that, plug this in. Once I've opened those up, the way I'm going to do that is basically just stick this needle into the centres of those just to open them up, make sure it seats right, make sure it's fully plugged in, and hopefully we'll have all the tail lights functioning. Then I can start fully building up this back end. And there you can now see they're wide open now. So the pins for the actual tail light now should be able to seat in correctly. I'll do that on both sides. That side was working, but I'll do that just in case we have any issues. Don't want to be plugging all this in, bolting everything together, and then hit a speed bump or something like that, and all of a sudden my tail light don't work. And I knew this was going to be a bit of a long shot. Testing with the key, functionality is absolutely fine on the driver's one, but then when I change that over to the passenger side, still getting nothing. But we have at least been able to fit the tail light bar in the tailgate, and that looks absolutely fantastic there now. And as I said earlier, they were insistent that I did some further testing on these lights to again prove that they were not working. So I managed to get some wiring diagrams for the actual pins of the tail lights, wired them directly to a battery so I could prove here that I'm getting 12 volt feed, and then testing all the points on the light. Again, brake light and side light works, but no indicator working. So probably ended up 2-3 weekends testing these in multiple different ways before I actually got the green light for them to send me that. But I'm glad to say it is now en route. They've charged me nothing for it, so I can't complain at that. It's just a little bit frustrating with the back and forth due to the time zone differences, so there's a lag with that, getting responses, and then translation issues too to contend with. Okay, so back to it with these tail lights and trying to work out basically the best way to place these looms. So what I've done is I've taped them all up, I've posted through all the original connections, so we've literally just got the connection to the new tail light here now. As you can see, what I've tried to do is use the same mouldings. Have got a gap there, which I will look to try and seal up. I had to split the rubber just to actually get the other cables through there. And then once we've done that, we'll be basically looking to get this fully attached, which then allows you to piece in the new tail light, completely different shape. So what I've also had to do here is where I've marked it in silver pen, I'm gonna have to trim that down. Now the reason for that is because when you've got the cable through with that tight up, you're actually pushing that bracket out, so it never sits quite right. So with that cut out, which I've done already on this piece, you can see there it now sits nicely in place, and we should be able to get the finishing piece on here without it looking too far out. It should line up quite nicely. We've got some adjustment here, so this bit here, if I just undo that, I'll be able to pull this out slightly just to make sure it's the same all the way around. So there's still a little bit of adjustment on these that you need to do when you do get them. You have also got another cable that runs down. This goes to the rear bumper, so I'm assuming that will be your fog lights in the rear bumper. Everything else, as I say, is on your tail light. Okay, so there we have it. That's now cut out to allow a bit more space for that loom to come through. Do just make sure you don't cut through the little nibs. I believe I will need them for securing the actual tail light to this bracket. So from what I can gather, it slots into this white grommet at the back, and then you've got those two at the front there as well to screw into. But this now should be more than okay to go on and fit nicely in place. Okay, so there we have it. That's now on, and again fits quite similar to the other side. Just step in here, so we'll just have to work out the adjustment on that for final fit. Now I'm going to hang 5 for Carl on this now, because I'm not 100% sure whether the rear bumper is going to have to go on first before the tail lights. So that is probably it for me tonight, but I'll see you guys in just a minute when I'm back in the unit and we're fitting up either the bumper or the tail lights themselves. And it's time for me to finally sort out this coolant, make sure I've got the correct measure in there. As I say, we're in December now, so antifreeze definitely needs to be in the right ratio, and I finally kind of worked out how I'm going to use my vacuum filling tool. So I'll just show you where I'm up to now. I couldn't get the vacuum up high enough to actually remove the original fluid. So what I've done is I've undone the hose clamps here and done it the old-fashioned way, drop the old fluid there. Now this is in the low temperature coolant circuit apparently, so I believe that runs through the battery system. I think it may have something to do with supercharger as well for cooling that, but hopefully I've now got this where it needs to be. I've already got my new coolant ready to go. We vacuum filled it and made sure there's no air in the line that's going to be going into the actual reservoir once it's held its vacuum. I'm going to leave that now a good 5-10 minutes probably, just to make sure that it does hold at that. And then once I've done that circuit, I want to be going to the high temperature circuit, essentially the standard coolant circuit that is the radiator itself. Probably a couple of minutes in now, still holding nicely. Leave it another few minutes and I'll show you the filling process. 10 minutes in now, as you can see there on the gauge, it's held nicely. So what I'm going to do is now open this up and making sure that this is at the bottom of there, stays at the bottom of there. It is weighted, so shouldn't have an issue with that, but we'll be keeping an eye on that. I don't think it'll take all of that, but just in case it does, obviously we'll then need to close the tap up and refill that to then get the correct amount and make sure there's no air going back into this. So let's open it up and watch this gauge go down to 0 as it fills. And there we have it. That is now dropped right down to 0. Looks like we've got the correct amount. We'll see if it then needs a top up once I've disconnected and opened that up. If not, we'll move this straight onto the other coolant reservoir, and what I'll do now is just hold that there. That should keep me holding the vacuum in this line, and again I'm ready then to go straight onto that, and I don't even have to purge that line now. There's no air going to be going into that. Okay, so there we go. As long as that holds for the next 10 minutes, I'll be happy to let that go. And we then got both coolant circuits with the 50/50 distilled and Porsche antifreeze in there, ready for the winter, and ready really mechanically now for this car to go back on the road. It's pretty much just the final bits and bobs to do then on the car, bolting up the front bumper, bolting up the rear bumper. As you'll know already, we've got the tail light issue that hopefully again that will turn up, looking more like January really, so we'll have to push back my service and MOT with Porsche, but as soon as that turns up, the back end will be complete, and yeah, we're ready to go. I have actually got a spare tyre now to replace this tyre, I believe it is, or is it on the other side actually, but one of them we've got some cord showing. It's actually this side here, so we've got cords showing on the inner. The others all seem to be okay, but yeah, managed to pick up a part worn 50 quid. I'm going to be looking at putting new alloys on this, so I don't really want to be spending more than that, just enough basically to get it through its MOT, and then probably end of January, February, the new wheels should arrive. I can get them fitted, and then once that's complete, we'll be on with the retrofits. So another exciting part of the build for me on this car is going to be doing those retrofits, putting in as many factory extras as it could have been spec with from Porsche, and with that as well adding the CarPlay, because this is a 2015 model, so I don't believe it's got the CarPlay put in here. I think that went into these in around 2017. So a new head unit I've opted for. Now that's going to be a case of trying to modernise that interior slightly as well, with obviously the massive modernisation that we're doing on the exterior. Okay, so we've had more than long enough waiting for this to hold its vacuum now. It's certainly doing that, so we're going to do same as what we did before. Open up this, that'll allow the new coolant to go in, and I'll just keep an eye on the bottle to make sure we've got enough there. There we go. You can see we've got a really good vacuum on there because it's absolutely sucking like mad on there, and hopefully that'll be enough, but if we do need to add to it, I have got some more. Okay, that's looking pretty low there, and we're still not at zero, so what we'll do is we'll just stop that now as it is. Okay, so another 1.5 or 2 litres near enough of 50/50 antifreeze and distilled water mixed, and we'll open this up again. As you can see there, it's still holding in vacuum, so it still needs a little bit more going in, and we'll see where we get to with that. And it appears that that is probably all we need there, so we should be good to go. What I'll do after this as well is I will actually run the engine for a little bit, get it warm, chuck the heating on inside, and then see if it actually needs another top up as well. To do that, I'll leave the coolant reservoir lid off and top up accordingly. I have had to really make sure it was secure and use a bit of the old Teflon tape, because it was leaking just enough for it not to hold its vacuum on this one, but Literally just that little bit of Teflon tape, that's all it needed. And you can clearly see there we now have coolant in the reservoir. We're probably a little bit above max, I would say, there looking at it. I'll run this engine and then that should draw a little bit through the heating matrix on the inside. So let's get the car started up. What I'm going to do is make sure both these caps are off while it's cool, and then what I want to do is, if it does require it, we can easily top them up then. As I say, I'll put the heating on in here, whack it on full whack. Don't want the AC on because I've not refilled the AC yet, and we'll also know when we've got heat coming out of these that we've got no airlocks. I did say in another video as well, it didn't sound great on the actual video. Standing by the car now, sounds absolutely fine. So it'll be interesting to see how it comes across when I actually upload this video. See whether it does sound like it's got any ticking or anything like that. So there we go, straight away. We need a little bit more coolant in there, topped up now. And hopefully, that doesn't mean that there's air in the line. I would imagine one of the solenoids would have opened up, then that's why we had that drop quite quickly. And again, another reason why you do need to keep the caps off and then just let them run. Now if we look at the main reservoir, we're still okay in there. Can't quite see on the camera, but it's probably just below its max there now, so I'm not going to add any to that. That'll take a while to heat up, to be fair, anyway. And a little sneak peek at the lights, guys. So I don't know whether I've shown you these yet, but obviously the newer version, so they look really, really smart. Can't wait to get that front bumper fitted so you can see them properly. And obviously I'm not going to run this for too long because, as you can see there, don't fancy killing myself. Back in the car now, and it's certainly getting some nice heat in here, so I'm happy to say that that's flowing around with no issues, no airlocks. You can see there the temperature steadily going up. We'll wait until it gets to about 90 degrees and then we'll check again, check them levels. One thing I have actually noticed on this with the kit on is the reverse camera. Annoyingly, the bottom of the actual tailgate obscures the view, so I'm not sure how I'm going to get around that, but I'll certainly need to do something there. Okay, so we're back over at the unit, back with the Porsche, and today, because we've been put on stop with the tail light that we're now waiting to come back to us on, hopefully I'll be getting that early January. That'll be basically the final piece to the puzzle and get this car on the road. But whilst we're waiting on that, actually installing that is not going to mean that the rear bumper needs to be off. So what we're going to have a look at doing is finishing off the transfer of all the original parts. So the loom, which is essentially just your rear sensors, and then you've got your lighting system in here as well. So we're going to transfer that over to the new bumper. We've also got new tailpipes as well, so we'll transfer those over in preparation for that. Might be a case of actually just leaving them off for the time being, fitting the bumper and then fitting them afterwards. I'll have a look into that, but at least then the back end will be virtually complete. One other thing I need to do is the rear view camera. So we noted that got an obstruction of the rear view camera, so I mean you can't even see it there. You're actually looking at it there, so I need to create something that will just bring that down slightly. Not worked out how I'm going to do that yet, so I'll crack on now, get everything switched over to this and have a look at seeing if I can actually get it fitted up and seeing how exactly it fits and how it looks. Okay, so just looking at transferring over the heat shields that are actually on the original back bumper. Now these are different, or they need to be adapted to enable them to fit. You can see here you've got 3 different areas where they tie in with some Torx bolts, whereas on here you haven't got anything in this area to connect them. You do, for some reason, have that one there, and there seems to be an opening there which lines up virtually with the original. Now what I've gone and done here is I've altered the original one. I've made some cuts, so as you can see across here, I've cut this down. I've been able to put that in the same position that it is on the original on the bumper, and here you can see the original hole. That's a hole I've had to make to allow this to fit. Now it's pretty secure in there, so don't think I'm going to have any issues when it's on the road. I don't think I need to actually attach anything here, so I'm going to leave it as that, and that should enable me to have no issues with any of the plastics melting or anything like that with the exhaust tips in there. Far better than leaving it off altogether. Next stage is going to be basically finish off that side, and then we'll look at transferring over the wiring loom. So it looks like we've got holders here for the actual loom itself, and then like the front, I'll have to attach what we've got for the reverse sensors into these areas, and they're all labelled up so you can't get these wrong, and then we can fit that in, and it's pretty much then ready to go on the car. Okay, so I've managed to actually bolt this in place here. So all I'm going to do now is basically mark out where my holes need to be, and if they're going to sit there, follow this down, and that's where we're then going to cut to make sure it actually fits correctly. Moving on now to the parking sensors, and these essentially they're all labelled so you can't really get them wrong. QR1, so that essentially will go into this pre-made slot there, and we'll know that fits correctly, and that's the same with all of them. So literally just going to stick them in place now. They're all 3M taped, and then we're ready to transfer the loom across. Strip the loom from the original, just transferring it over now. As you can see there, I've just popped in the first of the parking sensors. Next one will go here. The only thing that's got me thinking on here is, well, 2 things. One, that cable distance from there to there is not going to really allow me to slot them into the connections at the top, so I might have to try and just extend them slightly. The second thing is, for the original fog light, I'm assuming is what it is, we've got these connections either side. Now we've got alternate connections that will go into these here, but I've just noticed that I've got one connection on the tailgate that doesn't have anything to plug into. Now this plugs into it perfectly, so what we're going to have to do, I think, is double check all the wiring, double check all the lighting once this is in place, because we've got this here which doesn't seem to be able to go into anything else. All the lights on the light bar seem to work fine, so I'm not entirely sure what's going on there, whether it is that we don't need to use that, or whether we're going to have to try and run an adapter cable somehow through to that. I'm not too sure, but yeah, let's get this in place. I'll try and do the best I can with these to try and see if I can get them to sit into these positions where they should, and yeah, we'll plug in the 2 at the bottom, turn the lights on, see what actually turns on. Right, so with the actual wiring plugged in, as it's suggested in the wiring diagram for this kit, the fog lights seem to activate in line with the brakes. It's certainly not going to pass any MOTs wired in this way, and currently I now don't have any fog lights. So I'm going to try and get to the bottom of this now, fathom out how I can actually turn those brake lights into a fog light, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, so just having some issues with the actual fog light, so just showing you then me actually trying to test the lights, setting up the camera and double checking to see what's working, what's not. And it appears that if I fit the wiring as instructed with the adapter loom here, basically the lower bumper lights are going to act as brake lights. So what I've managed to do is, off of the plug for the original rear fog lights, I've managed to work out what's your positive, what's your negative, and then tested it with the switch as you've just seen. And I should be able to solder into those two cables. There is a third one for some reason, not sure what that is for, but I should be able to solder into those, and then that should give me a functional fog light for both of these lights here at the back on the back bumper, and then hopefully I'll be able to get this rear bumper on. So this is your original fog light plug, and as you can see here, I've actually got my live, which is the red, and my negative, which is the green, and I've essentially just pinned them on for now onto the actual rear bumper light, just to make sure that that was functional. So what I'm going to do here now is, this was the original plug that came with the adapter loom, so that obviously plugs directly into there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this off, and then I will wire this in probably to the cables on this side, test it works again, and then I'll tape up. This is all things that you have to sort of crack on with when you get these types of kits. So we've got to the bottom now of finishing off the loom in the bumper. So what I've managed to do is get it in the exact position that we need it in. So I've done some extensions to these sensors in the middle, and then also what I've done is change my connector to the new rear fog lights, essentially. Done that on both sides so it looks as OEM as possible, and then you've just got your standard bumper connections there at the back. So there's nothing else to actually fit here. There's no loose cables, there's no plugs that aren't going to be plugged into anything. And now what I'll do is I'll plug this all in and check that them fog lights do work. As long as they are working correctly, this whole rear end can be complete. It'd be nice to see that finished off, and we'll move to the front. Okay, so there we have it. We've now got the lights turned on with the car on, and I've turned the fog lights on, and we've got both lights at the back bumper. A little bit hard to see because I've literally just laid it on the floor to actually test this out, but that's worked perfectly. So we've now got all the lights working as they should. So over Christmas, my dad actually came over from Oz, and I managed to rope him into getting into the unit and helping him mount up this rear bumper. It was really good to spend some time with him. I was gutted that I wasn't actually able to get this car on the road for when he was over here. Would have been really nice to have shown him the finished car, but we are still waiting on that light unit. But I was really happy with the progress that we managed to make anyway, getting this all built up. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you're enjoying the build. If you are, smash that like button. If you've not done so already, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on the next one.